So picture this. The countdown has begun. I'm standing backstage waiting for my turn to speak and praying to God that I don't actually stumble, fall, and break a leg. How in the holy hell did I find myself about to talk about the imposter phenomenon and what it means to me? Now, sitting backstage, I find myself freaking out. Have to tell you, I'm personally terrified right now. Have no idea how I found myself here. But here's the thing. There are 70% of the population who have experienced these feelings with self-doubt. Let me put that into perspective for you. There are 100 people, or about 100, in this room right now. That means that there are 70 people in this room who have experienced these feelings of self-doubt. That's 70 people who, like me, may find themselves in a situation to where they're like, how did this happen? What am I doing? So, those 70 people, they may not have found the courage to talk about themselves, may not have the courage to find their way, find their passion. By the end of this talk, I would like for the 70 people to be able to find the courage in themselves. A little background about me. My field of choice is higher education and student affairs. That means a long time ago, I decided that I was going to stay in college for the rest of my life, helping students succeed. So back when I was in grad school, they had this award called the Most Outstanding Student of the Year. Now, this award, it wasn't just some plastic trophy for folks who participated the most in class. It called for greatness, and it called for an actual contribution to the field. So naturally, at first, I was like, nope, I'm not a contender. This isn't happening. I'm not going to do this. So, for me, it was that internalized feeling of self-doubt. I'm not good enough. I'm not qualified enough. It's not here. That's not for me. But then, had this aha moment where I was like, all right, I need to find this stuff. My accomplishments, my successes, I actually had to sit down and write about them all. Because here I am, a 20-something-year-old who 2 months prior was chopping it up with the president and the executive director of a national student affairs organization, who also happens to serve on a national coalition, particularly for grad students and new professionals. But again, what does that mean? What qualifies me to get this award? What is it? But I had to move past that, move past those feelings of self-doubt, and I actually sat down and wrote about all of my successes, my accomplishments, and my aha moments that I still use to this day. And what do you know, folks? I actually won that award. Now, women in particular, they find themselves more traditionally likely to experience feelings of self-doubt and be more vocal about it. And with that, in contrast to men who they don't do it as much because of things like societal norms and gender stereotypes. But for us women, if we think about it, we're taught to nurture, we're taught to do for others before ourselves, but at what capacity does it take for us to find it within ourselves, to take the time to move past that self-doubt? So when I was an undergrad, I found myself trying to figure out what my next move was going to be. I had no idea what was going to happen, but I knew that I needed to figure it out. So everybody else that was around me, they had their next moves. They knew they were going to grad school. They knew that they were going to succeed in everything that they were going to do. But here I was, still trying to figure out what was next. And it wasn't until I had a couple people that were in my corner that were more than willing to talk about how successful I was and to point out those experiences to me. And again, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, had to think through that thought process and figure out where exactly I was going to fit in. And I realized that I needed to stop comparing myself to others. And how hard is that, not comparing yourself to others? It's almost too easy. But if you think about it this way, comparing yourself to another person is like mixing toothpaste and orange juice. It's not a very good combination. Now, if any of this resonates with you, then I have three very strong things that are going to move you through that self-doubt. Recognize, record, and release. It really starts with changing your mindset. So personally, going through this whole talk process, I had no idea how I was going to maneuver it, what I was going to do, but I knew that there was a message that needed to be told. So when I looked on the TEDx website, I saw that it said Educational Leadership Specialist. At what point am I a specialist? That makes absolutely no sense. I didn't know what it meant for me, but I had to work through that and realize that, one, recognize that I'm doing it to myself again. I needed to push through those feelings. I needed to realize that I have a lot of accomplishments, so one, recognize. The second thing that I realized was, Michelle, you kind of have a master's degree that's dedicated to educational leadership. So obviously there's some type of specialization there. So that was my recording of my accomplishments. And then in that moment, it was enough for me to say, okay, girl, you got it. You were there, this is it. And it was enough for me to push past those negative notions that I was not good enough, that I was unqualified to present my topic about the imposter phenomenon. So for me personally, that was my journey in coming to you to talk about this TED Talk. And it was not easy. But I will say that I have, even sitting backstage, jumping up and down and wiggling, I knew that I needed to get past the nervousness and actually present this topic because I know that there's somebody that needs to hear it. So, when you are recognizing, think about how it stops you. You stop dead in your tracks and you're trying to figure out, okay, what is it about me? What is this moment that I'm feeling? How do I push past this? It immediately feels like you're stopping dead in your tracks trying to figure out what you're going to do next. It sounds and feels, and it just is everything that has to do with hearing the thunder and immediately seeing a strike of lightning right after. You literally stop and realize, okay, I've got this. I have to recognize it right now. The second thing to do is to record those little accomplishments, no matter how little they are, and have the people that are in your corner cheering you on. And when I say those people in the corner, I mean your biggest cheerleaders, the ones with the biggest pom-poms that are ready to be there for you when you need them at a moment's notice. So for me, that was probably half the people that are sitting in this room trying to figure out, okay, I've got this is what I can do. And no matter how insignificant you may think that the accomplishment actually is, you might as well keep it down. Write it down and make sure that you have it. I have this little superpower that I like to think of, and it's actually not really a superpower, but more of a skill, a certain dedication to my students, and most importantly, to my career. I actually convince them to come to me when they have issues. So with that, I have to keep that into play when I'm thinking about my little accomplishments. Not a day goes by that I have a student stop me and say, Michelle, thank you. Thank you for being here. So for me, that is everything that I need in that moment for that accomplishment. The last thing to do is to release the negative notion that you are inadequate. It is not true. It is literally pressing that submit button, calling on the person that you need to get you through that moment, and taking the courage to understand, yes, this is me, I've just done a great thing, and I cannot complain at all. Now for me, obviously that moment is going to be as soon as I say I'm done. Thank you. So, I started this talk with talking about the 70 people that are in this room who may not have had the notion or may experience a self-doubt and they can't get over that little hump. From this talk, I really hope that you'll use the task of recognizing, recording, and releasing the notion that you're not good enough. And if you ever get that itch again to doubt your abilities, I ask that you recall those 3 R's and find them for yourself. Now for my big moment. Whew, okay, thank you.